Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rock and Roll Union Streamcast. I am CT. I know we had 2 weeks off, but we are back and better than ever before, guys. We have a kick-ass show for you this evening. We will be joined by Mike Collins of Machines of Penalty. Then we'll be talking to Philadelphia Rock historian Joey Bruno. We'll be talking everything the Philly scene, past, present, and future, and just a lot more, guys. To start off the podcast, to start off the show, I wanted to give a very big, warm, and hearty congratulations to the February Artist of the Month. The February Artist of the Month, it seems like Tuesday, they opened up a killer set with As We Become Ghosts at Union Firehouse 2 weeks ago. As seems like Tuesday is the February Rock and Roll Union Artist of the Month. If you guys missed it before we came on the air, we also announced the lineup for our 5th birthday bash. It's going to be an exciting evening. The tickets are going to be on sale very soon. You're going to see Sick Vicky, Carte Blanche, and Scorpio. Scorpio opened, or not opened, but played one of the very first Rock and Roll Union live shows that we've ever done. They did the very first one, which was our original Rock for Recovery, man, 5 years ago. So it's been a long time, man. They're back and excited to have them, as well as Carte Blanche and Sick Vicky, man. Really happy to see Sick Vicky back again. We are talking to everybody in the rock community, that the makers and shakers, the movers that really helped the scene become what it is. Next week, we will be live on location at Halftime with Mark Azzello, owner of Halftime. Great dude. We're going to be talking to him and discussing the music scene there as well. So buckle up. It's going to be a good couple of weeks. And guys, it is my pleasure now to introduce to you one part of Machines of Penalty, my good friend Mike Collins. Mike, let me unmute you, Mike. Mike, how are you, my friend?
How are you, CT? I'm doing well.
Good, man. Good. Just really excited to talk to you. You had played our Christmas bash, our Christmas toys for toy drive, and yeah, the now I got the shirt on, and it's. Yeah, man, great place to play. Great owner there. But I want to go back a little ways with you, Mike. You guys have been around for quite a long time in the local scene. How long have you guys been playing together?
2008.
2000. Wow. So
original band, been together going on 15, 16 years now.
And who could you say? Has there been many lineup changes?
There's been quite a few. Yeah, people come and go. Some people have gone out for a spell and they've come back. Leads us to what we were talking about right before we went on air there with our bass player. Steve Beach is having some medical issues right now. He's put up a pretty good fight. We're trying to get some people together to raise some money for him, help him get through this time. While he's out, our old bass player Dave Voss stepped back in. But we are doing a benefit concert for Steve at the Trio Tavern in Williamstown on February 19th. And it's going to be from 1 o'clock till about 8. We'll be playing a lot of the cover band scenes because Steve is big in the cover scene. Also, he plays in that. I do know Jailbreak's confirmed for it. I do believe Chuck Goshen and his band, Chuck's Alibi. They're great kind of old like jazz standards and all that. Chuck's a great dude. So, like I said, there's a lot of other people in there too.
Now, how do people go about buying tickets for that event?
Right now, it's an online event. I do not know that there are tickets sold. I think it's pretty much going to be an open door policy. You come in, you make a little donation. I do believe the bar is putting some up toward it. I don't know the inner workings of it.
Gotcha.
It's a nice one. I got to show up. They asked me to come and play. I'm going to show up. We're going to play our guitars, and we're going to do as we're told that day. So
that's it. Now, has there been any kind of like a GoFundMe page or anything else set up?
There has. It's done very well. If you search Steve Beach, if you search it's on the Machines of Penalty page, obviously. But if you look at any of those spots, you'll find it. It's there. And Money goes directly to Steve and his family. So, like I said, he's having a rough road. I think he'll come back, but it's going to take him a little bit of time to do that. So, in the meantime, we can help him out. You know what I mean?
That's it. That's it. I mean, there's also a another benefit coming up for another union band, another gentleman who went through it. Yeah, Phil Wax. Phil Wax, another one, man. We've been getting hit hard lately.
Yeah. I know Phil. Phil's a real nice guy. He's nothing but ever been good to us. I heard it was a car accident right around Christmas, I believe it was. So yeah, it's good to see. From what I've heard, he's doing all right. He's kind of pulling himself through it a little bit too. Again, I wish nothing but the best for him. Phil's a nice guy.
So let's talk more Machines of Penalty. Going back, next year will be your 15th anniversary.
Yeah, yes, it will.
What have you guys noticed? What have you noticed, Mike, from the very beginning of the band till now, as far as accessibility of shows, turnout, those kind of things?
The scene over the last 15 years, it kind of runs in cycles. It gets real good for a while, then it sort of goes bad. I mean, I want to say the pandemic over the last 2 years kind of hurt everybody, obviously, but it just shut a lot of clubs down. Since that, I will say a lot of our venues in Jersey especially have disappeared.
Yeah.
Hot Shots was a spot we used to hit pretty regularly. It was always a good spot. We just lost Timeout 2, which unfortunately we after losing Timeout 1 last year. And those folks were really putting something nice together there too. They were starting to see maybe covers aren't the only way to go. And we were doing very well with the original nights there. We would do it like once every 2 months, 3 months. And we were killing it. And unfortunately, just, I guess the cost of doing business in the state of New Jersey is just, it's hurting people. It makes it rough.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of, from what I've heard, increases in insurance rates for some of these venues and things along those lines, and a big toughening up on drinking and driving, which deters people from going out in the first place. I don't suggest drinking and driving. I suggest Uber, no matter what, or taxi or designated driver, wherever you're going. But I think some of these laws are also tracking down on people and kind of giving people a second thought to maybe going out.
Yeah. Like you said, even that, I mean, I saw that at timeouts. People would get Ubers called all the time. It was not a big deal. It's just the clubs themselves are having a hard time keeping their doors open,
Now, as far as the metal community, you guys are hardcore in that metal community. Jersey being a hotbed of metal for as long as, God, we can remember, going back to the Metal Militia and things along those lines.
Sure.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about that metal community? Maybe some stuff that people don't notice, just how tight knit you guys are.
Well, like I said, we're not the only band that's been around for a long time. There's us. There's our friends in Meat Plow. A lot of the bands over here have been going on for a long time, and it's I don't know. None of us seem to want to give up. So I mean, it is tight knit. I see it with Steve's thing. I saw that GoFundMe went through the roof, and that was a lot of people donating to that. A lot of people from that community. A lot of people donating time and just the raffles. I know they're collecting that for the thing now. So it's tight knit. They're all good people, and it's just a matter of staying through it. You know what I mean? And honestly, we love doing it. My 20-year-old son put it best to me. He's like, some dads are in bowling leagues. My dad's in a metal band. That's way cooler. Awesome. Yeah. So smart kid.
Now, does he follow you a lot into that style of music?
Oh yeah, he does. My daughter could care less, but the boy's got a much better, much more refined taste in music. We agree a lot, and he's getting to the age now where he's actually involved. He helps out. We do a lot with Elephant Talk too. We run a lot of the sound gig with Jerry and Elephant Talk, so we've done some charity work with them too. And my son for the last 2 or 3 years now, to the point he's running his own stage down there when we do that. So
nice.
Like sound company and all that. Yeah, he's into it. He's a little young for the bars yet. He's got a year to go, but we're getting him there.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're not creating a monster with that kid starting at 21 years old.
Nah, he's a smart kid. He's a good kid. He is. I like him.
Yeah,
So
you
so I
think
should
you'll
keep
keep
him.
him.
Yeah.
So, what do you listen to, Mike? What are some of your favorite bands to listen to? Of course, today Ozzy released that he is completely done touring, and I think that's just
Probably not a bad
the
thing.
best thing for him to do right now.
Yeah. It's showing our age. I mean, been seeing Ozzy for a lot of years. Personally, what were the big record releases for me last year? A lot of the Coheed and Cambria stuff, my own personal thing. That's probably a top five right now for me. Um, Zeal and Ander put a record out last year. Asteroids, a young band. They're real good. Yeah, all over the place though. I mean, they're like more metal releases. Honestly, with the passing of Jeff Beck, I kind of went back and found a lot of his stuff. I've been listening to that nonstop for the last like maybe month or so now. So you forget how good that guy actually was. Like, but man, that dude could play guitar.
Man, I was talking to, and I'll be with him next week, Mark Azzello from Halftime, and he said when metal bands get together, when metal bands show up for a show, there's no better community than the musicians that are in those bands because they'll stay around and watch the other bands and support the other bands. How much does that support? Like how much does that mean to you guys?
It's all of it. I mean, it's yeah. One of the things with what we do and being local and original and the bands you're talking about, it is a scene. It is self-supported by the people in it. And what I mean by that is like, I mean, if the big bands tour, Iron Maiden tours every 2 or 3 years. I go all the time. Every time they tour, they start showing up every weekend. I might give a couple of them a pass. We're playing locally, and we're asking all of our friends to come out and say, "Hey, listen, come to see us in Delaware next weekend. Hey, come see us in Atlantic City. The following weekend after that, come see us up in Ben Salem somewhere." So it's a bit of a grind to drag people out and get them consistently to come out and see. And so the support of the other bands matters immensely. It's one of the things that get you through. Um, like I said, Mark's Club down there, half times. That's a nice little spot. We played down there a few times. Um, he has a core group of bands down there that are very inclusive guys. They're all real nice people. I know Burned and Effigy, our drummer, we share a drummer with Burned and Effigy, and those guys play down there all the time.
Gotcha.
So, and then
Now,
I
as
see
a veteran of this scene, what would you suggest to some of the young upstarts just now coming in?
keep your head about you. Keep at it. I mean, like I said, you're probably not going to be a rock star, but it really don't matter.
Yeah.
You do it because you love doing it. As long as you keep that in your head, you're doing it for the right reason. You'll be fine. You'll have a great time, a lot of memories, a lot of stories.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it constantly on this show, the difference between here and like Europe or other parts of the world as far as music scenes and music is concerned. They have you ever experienced overseas? Have you ever been there as far as a rock fan?
No, I have not. I love
Man,
to.
yeah, it's on my
See
bucket
what,
list.
yeah, it's something. It's a matter of putting the tour together. I've kind of done some overture, looking into it a little bit to see what it would take. Um, maybe actually put together a tour with maybe one or two other bands and work something out. I do have a few connections over there. Some from people we play with. Actually, the other place we looked is over at like Asia and Japan. I know that Chris Natalini and his crew went over there a couple of years ago, managed to put a tour together. And from what I've understood, it went really well for them. So
Nice. Now, a question that I have, and it just happened today. I'm not sure if you saw the nominees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or what they call the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But to me, it kind of sat a little sour to see Missy Elliott on the same ticket as Iron Maiden. Like, any thoughts to that?
You know what? That place, it's a commercial entity. I've watched it over the years. There's been years where I've been into it. I know a lot of people had a problem with Snoop a couple of years ago getting in there, and I was like, you know what? He was cool though, and I guess it's all rock and roll. Just because it sounds a little different, so be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I loved every band that's ever been inducted. Some I do, some I don't. Some of the rock and roll, some of those shows, I was a big fan the year Rush finally got allowed to go in the Rock and
Yes.
Roll Hall of Fame, and I thought Dave Grohl and his guys kicked ass, pretended to be Rush for that little thing. That was one of their high point moments. I thought the whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've seen other inductees. I've seen Hart. They did that set with Jerry Cantrell, Alice in Chains. That was a great one. Again, I know there've been key elements over the years. So yeah, does Missy Elliott belong in there? Sure, why not? You know, she belongs in there as much as anyone else. I mean, she sold records. She sold records to rebellious kids who had their own way of thinking. Did I buy any of those records? No.
No.
But it's cool. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not going to sit there and say, I'm sure there's other people that have been inducted that ain't bought their records either. So Iron Maiden, I bought all their records, and I think they're a little long past due to get in there. Yeah, but let's face it too. There's been many a year of we'll call it a cold shoulder toward the metal community.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, there's been a couple people. I mean, Rush was nominated for what, like 19 years.
Yeah.
And eventually they get in by the skin of their teeth. But like bands like, I'm not saying, again, I'm not going to say that bands that like don't belong there, but like Linkin Park's in there after 6 years. Linkin Park, right. Good, they're cool, but really, they got in there 7 years before Rush. Like, come on,
Like, to me, it sits a little rough to see how long Metallica's been in there and Iron Maiden hasn't been.
Isn't there yet at all. Like, yeah, exactly. Now, I'm a little biased. I'm definitely more in that Maiden camp than the Metallica. I could probably do that. I saw you put something up the other day in a post, and I think you referred to that Lux Eterna song or whatever. It's just good enough to like keep them there. And I was like, that's a really accurate description of that song. I mean, I got to say that song, you heard it once, and I went, I never need to hear that again.
Right, like, exactly.
Don't care. And I got to say, I haven't really been a big fan of that band since probably '89.
Yeah, I think that's all of us that kind of grew up with Metallica. Like, we remember when Master of Puppets came in or Ride the Lightning came in, and then we started falling off like
the Black
album. Yeah.
Yeah, that Enter Sandman came out, and I kind of remember watching that. It's funny, this past weekend I got together with some guys that was in my first band. We were young dudes, 17, 18 years old. And we ran into each other at one of our 50th birthday parties, and we got together and said, let's get together and jam. We did. Our buddy Henry was a drummer, hasn't played drums in 30 years. I say he did really well, actually. He was a little sore, but he pulled it off. But I remember being at a rehearsal in his house in 1990, 89, 90, when Enter Sandman came out, and just watching everybody's jaw on the floor, kind of going like, what is this? Like, where is this from? Because that was the record coming off of, Master of Puppets, which was a masterpiece,
Yeah. Now, I mean, there's always been a debate whether or not, and that's something that we're actually going to do. We have another show called Rock Debate Club that we're doing next week, which will be Megadeth versus Metallica. And it took me, till maybe last week before I realized how much of a contributor Cliff Burton was, and the missing of Cliff Burton might have been what that turning page was.
Oh no, I agree with that 1,000%. I think that Justice for All was the last viable record, and it almost feels like, I think when Cliff was still around, he was the direction of that band. So I think what it ended up being that the riffs and the songs, even though Newsted's technically on that record, Cliff had passed away by then. The idea and the kernel of the songs was already like Cliff's idea. Like, so and then I think what ended up happening was the next record out was that Black album, and I think they were desperate for a bit of direction, enter guys like Bob Rock and like, mega $1 million producers. We did a show with Warren 100 years ago. And I remember people saying like, dude, you guys are playing with Warren? Aren't they like a glam metal? And I'll tell you what, they were heavy. They were great. They were awesome. Because ultimately nobody picks up the guitar and the bass and the drums and says, let's go out and just write these songs and look pretty and doll ourselves up. Everybody starts playing to try and be cool. And these guys could play. They brought it. They were a great live band. And there was a lot of people in that audience who were like scratching their heads saying, this is not Cherry Pie. What the hell is this?
Yeah, right.
But they were a great band who honestly some producers got a hold of, made them into something they weren't on the record or in an image. But bottom line, when you stick them in a little club somewhere with maybe 60, 80 people, and they're playing, and these guys are tearing it up, but they're the real deal,
I'll tell you what, when
people
they
lose track of that.
The album that came out after Cherry Pie, with how commercially successful Cherry Pie was, that very next record, Dog Eat Dog, I got to say is one of the most kick-ass hard rock albums ever produced. Like, it's so underrated. Uncle Tom's Cabin is like a gem.
Great song. The other band to do that was Cinderella. They came out with that Night Moves, which is like this glam metal record. And then they came in, the follow-up to that was that Long Cold Winter, which was a commercial flop. It's an incredible record. It's a great front to back. It's just a like this album's awesome, And then it just didn't people wanted more Shake Me, you know what I mean? And that's eventually you got to move on a little bit, but I don't know. I think the Metallica thing was they were just looking for direction. I think when they lost Cliff, they lost their direction.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
And then I think they hired direction rather than coming up with their own. They kind of just said, "Well, we got a few bucks now. Let's pay this guy to give us some direction."
Yeah,
I don't know. People would argue it worked. They went on like super stellar success. So what the hell do I know?
Yeah.
Kirk Hammett sits there and says, "I can suck all day long on my $250 million ranch." Now, I think Kirk's right. I'll go in a corner and I'll shut the hell up.
A couple comments from our viewers. The GoFundMe page has been added to the stream, so that's good for Steve Beach.
Cool.
Tickets are not being sold, so they're bought at the door, which is great news for that. Quick shout out to Steve Prestup. How are you? And Jim Sorey from Shades of Grey. No, not Shades of Grey. I'm sorry. Jim from Psychedelic Elder. Sorry, Jim. And just a big shout out to everybody watching. And we're here with Mike Collins of Machines of Penalty. And man, I got to say, I got a kick out of when you guys were playing the Christmas badge.
Yeah.
Your lead singer looks exactly like my best friend from high school. Like my wife just sat there with her jaw up, and she's like, "Oh my God, he looks just like him." But now, how long of a set would you guys enjoy to play if there were no restraints, no time limit? How long of a set would you prefer to play?
45 to 50 minutes are usually comfortable when you're doing it with a couple of different bands. The longest set we ever played is probably back when the Cherrywood was open. That was our backyard bar. Like we all lived down there, and we had a little bit like we had leeway to do what we want. I think the longest set we ever did down there was about an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes. Machine's been around a long time, so we have a lot of material to fill that. It's not like we're sitting there struggling like, oh, we have 7 songs. I mean, we have 2 full records plus. There's probably another two or three EPs floating around and stuff like, limited release and all that. We're in the process now of we got about 4 or 5 things coming. I don't think we're going to do a full length release this year. The plan is to maybe do a couple of short releases.
Gotcha.
At the level we're at, what we find is when you put all that blood, sweat, and tears into a record, which takes a long time to do, it's very expensive. You get a little bump locally. All of a sudden, like you get an interest and people come out to the shows. And what we found is you get the same bump from releasing one song and some other interesting, maybe some live stuff or maybe some whatever, some studio like one-off stuff. and you get the same bump from doing like one new song and maybe 2 or 3 things you just recorded. And I'd rather do that 4 times a year because the bump's the same.
Yeah.
Whether it's a 10, 11 song, full length, hour and 20-minute EP, or whether it's a 1 or 2 new songs. And so I think that's the process. We're going to try that out in the next maybe 18 months or so.
I think the trend right now seems to be the EP. So maybe that's like
Yeah, I
something
think
to
even
think
even
about.
bands way bigger than us are doing that now. So
Yeah, I mean, if you release a song every couple of months, like you're talking about, and then collect them all on one EP, so they're all in one place. I mean, that seems to be the growing trend right now. And like you're right, it's very expensive to get into the studio, and not to mention that people's attention spans aren't what they used to be.
not at all. That's changed immensely. I guess this with the computers and the YouTube and all that. We are working on starting a YouTube channel with the band. It's a lot of work, is what it comes down. What we're finding is it's not just everybody bring their cell phones and record each other.
Right.
The prep of it's actually we're doing a lot of work. I see you doing it there, and he's got a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. It really is. And I think that's something that a lot of people take for granted and think that people that are involved in music can just, it's an expensive hobby. It's a very expensive hobby.
I see behind you there are a couple guitars on the wall and all that. Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's like, favorite place to play that you've ever played? Favorite show?
My best show Machines and Penalty has ever managed to pull off was with we got an opening slot on a tour with Straight Line Stitch for a couple of dates, and we played up at the old Finnegan's Wake. That was the single probably most people that night. We played to about 700 or 800 people. I think that was a big room, and it was the main stage. I don't know if you remember Finnegan's Wake, but it wasn't the basement. It was the main floor. And that was a great gig. Like, kind of felt like a rock star that night. Historically, my favorite place to play is probably Bar 13 in Delaware. I just love that place. I love John. I love Matt. He's an awesome dude. Mike A is a great guy. I've known him for longer than I care to think about now. But no, Matt's always excellent with us. John's the best sound guy around. Like, it's just always a great time. He just knows his room. Like, we always sound great there. The crowd there, the people there. It's just what a rock and roll bar to me. That's what it should be. I always feel very comfortable in there.
The one thing that I must say out of the past 2 years, I'm glad that you guys are not playing behind plexiglass any longer.
Yeah, that was a little weird. But you know what? Here's the thing with them, though, too. I'm not going to say the plexiglass didn't suck. It did. However, we were playing. And that was a thing. That was they kept it alive through all that, and they said, "Listen, guys, you just want to play? You got to play behind these stupid plexiglass shields." I said, "Okay, we're there." And they were like, "Cool, we'll go buy the plexiglass." And they put it up, and it was the weird glare of the lights through the plexiglass. It was a rough couple of shows.
All the tables out in the parking lot. Yeah. I remember sitting around the tables out in the parking lot, and It was a unique experience.
It was fun, though. Like I said, not bad memories. Was it a little bit problematic? Sure. Yeah. But, I mean, again, we got through it. We never really took much of a break. We got to play the whole time. It was a lot of fun. I have no complaints.
I got to say, man, exactly right. Matt's choice to continue through that meant a lot to the rock community, meant a lot to the local musicians. And really, I mean, you're right, helped keep rock alive at that point.
Absolutely.
Because there were so many venues that were still shut down.
Well, I mean, again, nothing reopened in Jersey. Hot Shots, none of them. I can't even name you a place off the top of my head to play. I know there's a couple things down in AC, but from what I've heard recently, it looks like the Beret might have shut down.
Oh, they shut down. They're going to fine dining.
Well, there you go, fine dining. That's what you need more of that in Atlantic City.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I know that Anchor's down there, but I don't know much about that place. Other than that, I can't think of any rooms down there. I know the Watering Hole does some stuff off and on. hit or miss though. I don't know what they're doing lately. I haven't seen them advertising anything. So I can't tell you of a venue that that does original music, whether metal or rock or folk. I don't care what it is. There's not many around that'll do it.
And I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you, there was a point where I believed that maybe it wouldn't, like I was buying the hype, that the local hype, that it wouldn't sell. But I've been to some shows lately where it was original music and the place was mobbed.
Packed. We've done it. There's some bands that work well together. Again,
As We Become Ghost record release,
yeah.
packed. They did a show at Casey Ray's on top of the Violent Landis Theater. They did a thing called the Breaks contest a couple weeks back on Sunday afternoon with the Eagles in the playoffs, and they packed the place. I think original music has its possibilities.
Well, it's. I mean, ultimately, the cover stuff doesn't exist without some original bands occasionally writing you a song to cover.
Exactly right.
Ultimately, and again, I have a hand in that studio over there in Pittman, Audio Alley, and it's funny. It's to the point now where we kind of even make fun of them. But I don't know how many cover bands I've had come into the rehearsal part of that studio and say, "All right." And they'll have that little initial discussion on what they're going to do, and they're going to be, well, we're going to be a cover band. We're going to do different stuff, like we're going to do Ozzy, but we're going to do stuff that nobody else does, like Crazy Train. And you sit there and like we'll be sitting there listening to them, going, "Do these guys fucking hear themselves? Like, do they hear what they're saying?" And it's crazy. I mean, every time you go out to see these cover bands, it's the same 20, 25 songs. But that's the same way radio is. Like this area, I mean, Mid-Atlantic, Philadelphia, I guess we're the Philadelphia market here. The radio stations around here are horrible. They're terrible. Like, I mean, MMR is a terrible radio station. They play 12 songs on constant rotation, and they think there's something special because occasionally they'll whip a song out from like 10 years ago. And then there's some songs that'll never go away, like that 7 Mary 3 song. that song, it's been on the radio every day. I can't turn the radio on and not hear that stupid song. I hated that song. I hated it the day it came out in 1992, and here we are 30 years later, and it's still it's like a nice pick to the forehead, so man. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. So the original bands, that was a fight. Not a fight, but we used to beg what's name, Cheryl up there at timeout, saying, "Cheryl, give us a night." She was like, "Well, original stuff." And then, honestly, if you get her on there, you talk to her, "Cheryl, what do you think of original bands?" She loves us. From a bar owner standpoint, she loved us. Every time we did that, we would put the right bands together, and we would pack the place. It was packed.
You got a fan of your Night Swan. Like,
oh, yeah.
Somebody bringing up the Night Swan on the wall behind you.
Yep. It's a new one, actually. They are nice. They're beautiful. They play great.
So is that your go-to? Like, what's your favorite guitar?
Honestly, Charvels, I'm using a lot of them right now. I got a bunch there. Here's the room. I'm a collector. I've been collecting for years. So my go-to machines of penalty guitar have always been pretty much the Charvels the last 3 years. I played Stratocaster for years, and then the Charvels are just leveled up the Strat. With the other guys, I play with that Gutter Royal. That seems to be more like a Gibson bass Les Paul kind of a vibe to that. So, kind of fun.
Also, people agreeing with no original music left, music venues left, and also agreeing with your take on MMR. They do suck. I mean, I've had friends of mine who were pretty tight with Jackie Bam Bam, and Jackie Bam Bam mentions that he's only able to play what he's allowed to play.
No, but it's his job, dude. He's got a mortgage to pay, I'm sure. I'm not faulting him for, but I'm saying, like, you watch like an old movie where they talk about what like radio was like in the 60s and 70s, where you could get a job at like a radio station and be like, "Yo, I'm going to play the B side of this Queen record because I think it's awesome." And like, okay, and all of a sudden you have these like kind of, I don't know, like it's not, what would the word be? Kind of like these naturally occurring hit songs because some DJ somewhere was like, "Yo, I dig this. I'm going to play this." And then somewhere along the line, like, bean counters got involved saying, "Well, let's do this so that we can sell more widgets and let's play the crap out of." I always feel like you're spoon fed what's good. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, do I really need another yeah? Breaking Benjamin's a good band. Every song sort of sounds the same, but it just feels like it was like a computer generated thing. It's almost like, well, if we play this, it's safe, it's kind of rocking enough, and we'll be able to sell more ad time. That's all.
Yeah.
God forbid you have anybody out there doing something too crazy, you know. Like, there's something to be said for the Marilyn Mansons of the world, whether you like him or hate him. I'm not a big fan of what he does, but I think it's cool that he does it. I guess
Well,
what I mean.
Jay-Z came out and said that rap artists were the new rock stars of the world, and
He's right. Sure.
for a little while, it sat a little ill with me, and then to come and realize, they're taking chances. They're saying things in their music that rock used to say, but we don't say it in our music anymore in the fear to keep it PC.
Now we get Lux Eterna. Like, what?
Yeah.
Really? Like, I think I'll just watch TV. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not feeling it. So, and again, you do it because you love it. I'm not sitting there saying we write great songs or anything. We write what we can write. I mean, sometimes it's a fight. You have that fight. You sit there and struggle with guitars and practice times and showing up, and it's a commitment. So anybody who's doing this, whether at the Metallica level or like kids just buying their first guitars at 15 and 16 years old, saying, "I want to be a rock star," it gets in the blood, and you just do it.
That's it.
So,
Mike, one more question before I let
Sure.
you go. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Next upcoming gigs that people can check you out at.
Next upcoming gig, again, we have the thing for Steve we are doing on February 19th, Trio Tavern. After that, we don't have much going on until May 12th. 5/12, we are playing The Fire with Shallow Side, which is not an announced thing. So if you ask where you heard it, I'm going to deny it. But it's through Vertigo Entertainment. So that'll be our next gig coming up. We're going to be pushing that one, try and get some faces out to see that one.
Awesome.
So,
Mike, thank you so much for being with us tonight, brother.
Anytime, CT. Always a pleasure to see you. All right?
And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Later on, buddy. Bye-bye.
Good night. So there he was, man. That was Mike Collins from Machines of Penalty. Much appreciative of him hanging out with us tonight. If you haven't checked out Machines of Penalty and Metal's Your Thing, man, that is the way to go. They are a killer band. Really heavy. So just be forewarned on that if you're going out to check them out. Now, my next guest, I've talked to him quite often on Facebook. Really admire how he knows as much as he knows, man. It blows my mind. Everybody, please welcome Joey Bruno. Joey, how are you, my friend?
Hi, CT. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. Good. I know you're on top of the world with the Eagles in the Super Bowl, bro.
Yeah, this city's alive, man, with the sound of birds.
That was the one thing that I told my wife when the Eagles made it into the Super Bowl is this is great for area businesses.
Oh, yeah.
And it can be great for the area bands as well.
It's good. Yeah, I mean, look, you know of Ken Queter. He's down there doing tailgate parties, you know, every game, this almost the whole season. So, and, he's got his little tip jar out there, so he's making a little money down there. Yeah.
Enjoying it.
It's a good thing.
So, Joey.
Hey, before we start, I want to say that I got to check those guys out, man. I love that guy. This guitar player from the previous interview.
Oh yeah, Machines of Penalty, great band. If you like harder metal, they're a really good band to check out.
Did I hear him say they've been around for 30 years?
He's been in the scene for 30 years. The band itself has been around for about 15.
Okay. And it's interesting what he brought up about WMMR. If we want to touch on that later, I have some interesting stories about that. Going back though.
I'll
I
tell
mean,
you
things were
what, Joey.
different.
I always counted myself as a bit of a rock historian. I really like. I love rock and roll going back to its earliest days. That's one of the reason why I do what I do. I watch every rock documentary I can get my hands on. But no matter what I do, I don't think I have in my mind or my knowledge base what you have. Like every day you're posting stuff like I'm like, oh my God, how does he know this? This is so great. So it's good. Like, how long have you been following this and what got you into like the rock historian side of things?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll try to make it the short version. So, I mean, you could pretty much figure it was in my blood because very odd choice for the very first album that I ever bought as a 10-year-old kid. I already had like some Beatles and Stones albums that my brother had like turned me on to and left when he left for college, and some like 45s that were hanging around the house, you know. But the first actual album that I bought with my own allowance money was Jeff Beck, Truth. I was 10 years old, 1968. So, you know, I was already like, you know, that album is not the kind of album that a 10-year-old back in 68 would
Yeah.
usually pick. It's just, and then I followed it up with like, you know, with Inagata Davida and Let It Bleed and Led Zepp 1, you know. So I was already really, especially into the English thing, you know. I guess I'm an Anglophile, I guess you could say. So that being said, around that same time, around the age of 10, I realized that well, I actually heard I heard a song by Nas, a Philadelphia band, you know, Todd Rundgren's former band from the '60s, and they had a song called "Under the Ice" on their second album. That is a brutal, heavy song, right? But the drums on that song, okay, guy named by the name of Tom Mooney. I'm just telling you, like to me, to this day, I listen to that track and I still can't even figure out what this. You know, this is the most intense drumming I've ever heard, still to this day. And I heard that, and it just struck a chord with me. And I said, you know what? I want to play drums. I mean, this is what I think I should be doing. And I got right into it. I started taking lessons and studied here and there. And by like 71, I was, you know, 70, 71. We had a little jam room in my house, my mother's house there in the basement, and guys would come over and took off from there. I mean, you know, played mostly in all original bands, couple of cover bands in the late '70s, maybe mid '70s, but started off right away with original music. You know, writing the songs, you know, hooking up with the right people, and that went on. Okay, so you go through that. Around the '80s is when I really when alternative rock and stuff like that came about. I really got into that. I mean, it really it struck a chord with me. So that was really for me my favorite times that I experienced were the late '70s to the late '80s, maybe early '90s. You know, and I was into just such a diverse. You know, at that point in time, there was so much different kinds of diverse music that was being, you know, released and produced and written and performed. And you know, we here in Philly, we had some incredible venues during those years, and a lot of them. I once did a Facebook post where I listed how many venues, live venues for original music there were from the years. I think it was from like '78 to like '86 or '87. It was over 100,
Wow.
over 100, and many of them were actually in existence at the same time. So it's not like you could say, you know, there was 10 this year, and they actually just, you know, they crossed into one another. So that many times there was as many as 50, you know,
Wow.
active booking live original music. So that was a very productive time for me, and you know, I got to get into that. You know, coming from the '60s with the whole psychedelic, the hippie thing, the Woodstock thing. '70s, I got right into punk rock. You know, I got into the Pistols, the Clash, the Ramones, and then a lot of the more obscure, you know, punk bands. And all I got into industrial and So over the years, I have just amassed this knowledge, I guess you would say, of. I mean, some people are they're good with one genre of music. They may know a lot about one genre of music.
Right.
But with me, it worked out that here we are in 2023. That and I don't even know how all this stays in my head. A lot of my friends and family say to me all the time, "Dude, you're a burnout."
Yeah.
Now I mean that in the kindest sense. In other words, being in rock and roll, being in bands, being in a drummer, I don't bullshit. I tell you straight up. I had a bad cocaine habit for years and years and years. Okay. As a matter of fact, I didn't stop doing cocaine until 2010. So
Wow.
that's how far I took it, all the way up into the 2000s. So, the brain cells, I don't know what's happening here, but all I know is I took a real long sabbatical. I'll tell you the truth, in 2018, I didn't even have a Facebook account. I just had got on YouTube. I had never even seen YouTube. And the first thing I did was start a YouTube channel. And I just started going through, down that YouTube rabbit hole, so to speak, which led to the internet rabbit hole, and Google and this and that. So it works out that here it is. Like I've only been on Facebook 3 years this July,
Wow.
and I have managed in that pretty short amount of time, to find a niche, where when I got on Facebook, let me tell you, and especially I'm gonna talk about the Philly music scene. When I got on Facebook, there was nobody. Now we had a guy named George Manny, who was the historian for Philadelphia, and I mean he was an active historian. He was out there. He was filming stuff. He was collecting video and films. He had a movie in the works. Unbelievable what this guy did. He is legend. Unfortunately, he passed away about 5 years ago, about a few years before I got on Facebook. Now, I by no means have ever even thought to take his place. What I do is a lot different than what he did. I'm more of a digital archivist, um, as far as that's concerned. As far as physical archive material, I have a good bit of it, and I scan it and I post it. But what I mainly do is I collect and curate digital archives of music's history, or I guess you could say of rock and all its subgenre histories.
Right.
And that would include everything from Motown to jazz rock fusion, which is something I love. I mean, I love Return to Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra, you know,
Oh yeah.
all those bands, Alan Holdsworth. I love all that stuff too. So what happens is when you are into so many different genres of music, and then you're a music, freak, as I have been since the age of 10, you pick all this stuff up and it just, it goes into these little chambers in your brain. And then I look at something and I go, oh, I remember that. And I have a story that goes with that. And then I do that. I'll post the story with the photo, with the flyer, and that's what I started doing. And I have so many stories that I could never even in my whole lifetime I couldn't tell them all.
Right.
But so that's where a lot of this came from, and a lot of it also comes from. So in the 70s, I was very adamant about meeting every concert I went to. I had to try to meet somebody from the band, and it was usually the drummer, of course. Because I would always do the drummer thing. I'm a drummer too. I love your
Right.
and so I actually got to meet like so many people. I mean, I can't even tell you, and that's a lot of knowledge too, because I wasn't the typical kind of guy. I wouldn't be up. Oh, I love your band. Oh, they're so I approached them really on a very mature level, even as a teenager, and from a musical level, which they seemed to like. But I'm sure some of them didn't. Some of them were probably
Right.
like, "Oh,
Right.
the last thing I wanted to do was talk about music," right? But they were nice about it. So, through that, I mean, I hung out literally for a whole day with Carl Palmer from Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Wow.
Literally hung out in his hotel room, watched him get interviewed by like Rolling Stone, Cream magazine. This was in '77. I hung out with Phil Ehart from Kansas. I hung out with Jeff Beck for one whole hour at the Hilton Hotel on Packer Avenue, just down the block from the Spectrum
Yeah.
in '75 when he played there with the Mahavishnu Orchestra opening up. And I could go on. I mean, I literally met, I met Todd Rundgren a couple of times. One time outside the Tower Theater, one time out in Ambler at the Music Cabaret out there, Music Festival out there. So, that is something that really, that background of me doing that throughout the '70s. And then, of course, in the '80s, my main, I guess you could say my home base was a place here in Philly called the East Side Club, which is legendary. And when I can tell you, it was open from '81 till '85, about 5 years. And every band you could possibly think of that went on to be huge played there in front of 200, 250 people. I mean, Duran, Simple Minds, Tears for Fears. I'm telling you, it's off the charts. So literally, you're talking 7 nights a week, and I was there 7 nights a week.
Wow.
Drinking, doing blow.
So let me ask you a question as far as the Philly music scene is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You've been around a long time and you've seen almost everything there is to be seen in Philly.
Pretty much.
What do you think is the disconnect between the way things were and the way things are now, with as far as how hard it is to find a club that'll allow original music and even just getting people in the door?
Okay. And I'm glad you asked me that. Very glad. So here's the situation right now. Philadelphia has a big problem when it comes to music. You see this shirt I'm wearing, right? So this is something. I was down to a city council meeting last Thursday, or I'm sorry, the Thursday before that. So what's going on is some people, we're fed up. We should be known as what's referred to in the industry, or in many industries, the music industry, the tourist industry. We, Philadelphia, should be known as what's called a music city.
Absolutely.
Now, we all know LA, New York, Nashville, these are music cities. But come on, man. Athens, Georgia is a music city. Where's the South by Southwest held? Austin. I mean, we have a rich, unbelievable music history in this city, not only going back like with rock and roll to the '50s.
Right.
We go back, I mean, Marian Anderson was the first African American opera singer right here in Philadelphia. John Coltrane, the incredible jazz saxophone player, lived right on North Broad Street. So what's happening is, over time, now I'm talking in the '80s, when what I was speaking about earlier. It was great, man. I'm telling you, there was live venues everywhere. There was competition amongst the bands. There was so much going on. But you got to remember, the difference was no internet, no laptops. Right. So we were all bands that were in the rehearsal room, sweating, working on tunes, going out, playing to, small audiences, doing the old working it up to, larger and larger audiences, pasting flyers up all over the city, dealing with booking agents, trying to get good nights. It was all happening.
Right.
Now, what transpired since then is, one of the biggest problems I feel is, and I don't want to put this segment of the music creators down, but with the advent of the laptop and the instant, create a CD in your bedroom, create a band, you got people like Ed Sheeran going out playing to 50,000 people with an acoustic guitar and a computer, playing backing tracks and a drum machine. It's like, it's just become so overwhelming. I mean, I know myself, I'm always looking for new good bands to listen to. It is overwhelming. I have to like at some point just go, I can't do it anymore. I have to take a break because there's so many good records coming out, but nobody hears them. You have to look for them.
Right.
They're not going to come to you. So I'm one of those people. I'm always looking on Spotify, on YouTube, on the internet, wherever I can find good new music. But sometimes it just gets so overwhelming. So what happens in Philadelphia is this. Over the course of time, this city has just pretty much just given up on music. I can't go into too many details, but there was something that was in place in this city for many, many years. We're going back into the 90s or maybe even a little earlier that was supposed to be taking care of all this. They were supposed to be working towards making this a music city. And as we were actually possible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
And we lost that. Now, I'm not going to say anything, but somebody dropped the ball. I hear different stories. Some people say, no, that's not the case, but whatever. We didn't get it. And where did it go? Cleveland. Now they're known as a music city.
Yeah.
And granted, Cleveland has, Ohio itself has brought out some, there's been some great music that's come out of that state, that city, and the various cities across Ohio and everywhere else I just mentioned. But the fact of the matter is, Philly, we have the Philly sound, Sigma Sound Studios. I mean, we go back to the 50s, American Bandstand, Chubby Checker. We had the Latin Casino over in Jersey, which turned into Emerald City in the 80s. It went from a Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Rat Pack nightclub to one of the coolest, most awesome alternative clubs that that people still to this day can't believe how great that place was. We have so many legendary venues. The Bijou Cafe that was here in the 70s and the 80s. Ripley Music Hall. J.C. Dobbs on South Street.
Dobbs, yeah.
J.C. Dobbs, Nirvana played there. Pearl Jam played there to 100 people.
Who can forget the Troc, man?
The Troc is another one, come on. So we have so much going on. And then you got to think of, all the artists that have come from here. We have Todd Rundgren right off the top of the bat. All my friends know he's my number one. He's always been my number one. I have two Facebook groups that I admin dedicated to Todd Rundgren. So, people know when it comes to Todd, I'm the guy. I'm like an encyclopedia, But beyond that, beyond Todd, we have all that Philly soul stuff.
We had a sound. We had Philadelphia's sound.
If you want to go with the rhythm and blues, we had that. You don't want to overshadow, though. See, the problem was, I think a lot of times, as the 90s progressed and we went into the 2000s, what little recognition Philly was getting was specifically for the sound of Philadelphia, the Philly soul stuff that was coming out of Sigma. I don't want to lessen how important that is, but I want to also make sure that people understand that there are so many other facets to what our city has done musically. Okay. A good example in the late 70s into the 80s, we had the Hot Club, the East Side Club, the Love Club, Omni, on and on. We had a really incredible hardcore scene here. Hardcore punk, whatever you want to call it, punk rock. Okay. When I say hardcore, though, punk rock is one thing. Punk rock is the Ramones and a few other English bands and stuff. But the hardcore scene, Philly, we had an incredible hardcore scene. We had bands like Sadistic Exploits, Informed Sources. I could go on and on. And then we had a post-punk scene. Like people talk about Joy Division and New Order and, bands of the post-punk era. We had some of the best. We had Bunny Drums. We had Executive Slacks. And these are bands that incorporated, electronics. And we had the Stickmen. They're legendary, the Stickmen. They were literally like James Brown on LSD. So unique. You couldn't find another band in the whole world at any point in time that sounded like the Stickmen.
I think the other thing that gets frustrating to me is nobody realizes how big Philly was in the 80s. We were as big as the Sunset Strip were turning these bands out.
Oh,
but
everybody was
never
stopping.
given the recognition for that.
Everybody was coming here. Like I said, so you had at the same time at the Philadelphia Spectrum and even Veteran Stadium, you had these major acts coming in. The Stones were playing Veteran Stadium. I mean, look, we had the JFK thing,
Yeah.
legendary with
Live
Yes,
Aid.
Peter Frampton, Gary Wright, Poussette Dark Band, right? The four. I mean, everybody talks about that. At least not only in Philly, that's national. We had the Stones Steel Wheels tour came into the Veteran Stadium. I roadied that
Wow.
show. I mean, and then what about Springsteen? I mean, Springsteen. This could pretty much be other than Asbury Park. Well, during that time when the E Street Band was really out there, touring constantly and putting records out, Philly was like a home base. They were
Well,
doing seven.
the same thing could be said for Billy Joel as well.
Billy Joe, I've heard him in interviews say, that he considers us almost like a second hometown to him, other than New York. So you had so much going on, and then I'm telling you, literally, I know this sounds stupid, but I'm telling you, the minute that clock turned to the year 2000, I felt a sea change. I felt it. I saw it. Something changed. I don't know. I mean, I know it sounds crazy that would be pinpointed to that exact time, but I just noticed we changed into this next century, these 2000s, and ever since then I have watched everything deteriorate. Not only in Philadelphia, as to get back to your question you asked, but just nationally and internationally. Music is at a horrible place right now.
Yeah.
So you can only imagine with the way things are on an international level. Philly, we're like a small potato in that picture. So we need to really step it up. So with that in mind is what this is. So these guys here have formed this, which is the Philadelphia Music Industry Task Force. Now I went to City Hall, as I said, 2 Thursdays ago, and sat in the city council meeting where they presented all their the whole layout of what they plan to do, what they want to incorporate into this whole plan, on and on. The bill passed. They got funding. So this is the most important thing. Believe it or not, even though it's music, I got to see a whole other side. This is all about politics. It's all about red tape. It's all about
Yeah.
money. I mean, I'm at a city council meeting representing the music scene of Philadelphia. You know, it was bizarre in some sense. It was almost like because we had to actually sit through the whole meeting.
Right.
So it was like this. Before this came up, people were coming up talking about housing issues with their bill and talking about why are they putting a golf course in the middle of the hood in West Philly, and then we come up and five very eloquent and fantastic speakers from the task force got up and spoke, and it was marvelous. It was just amazing what they said. If I wish I would have taped it. I didn't want to pull out my camera, but I would have loved to have videotaped it and transcribed it, because it literally said exactly what was wrong and what needed to be fixed
Yeah, that's
in
awesome.
those five statements. So the ball is rolling. I mean, I don't have a direct involvement with it. I do have a peripheral involvement right now. My plan is to get very involved as the year progresses. Um, right now, so the bill has passed. Now, just the funding has to be worked out. The amounts, what money goes where, et cetera, et cetera. So, with that being said, things are going to get better. Things are going to get better. As a matter of fact, they've already not this particular not the music industry task force, but another faction that's working to get some things done. I don't know if people know this, but at the international airport right now, there is a whole exhibit on the sound of Philadelphia. Gamble
Oh,
Huff,
wow.
yeah, Gamble and Huff, Philly International Records, Sigma, the whole thing. So this is a tourist thing. So what this thing has become is when you become a music city, you don't only become a music city, you become a tourist destination.
Yeah.
So this is why city council is involved because it's going to bring money.
Yeah.
What they plan to do is open museums everywhere. They're going to open the John Coltrane House as a museum. They're going to open Marian Anderson's house as a museum. They're going to do bus tours. They're going to go to all the locations where the clubs were throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s. They're breaking it down into literally almost into decades. And I have been mainly called upon to represent the 80s. So whenever all these things
Great
congeal
stuff.
and everything happens, I will pretty much be, along with a few other people under me, the guy that's going to be handling the 80s. There's other people that are going to be doing the 60s. There's people that are going to be going back hundreds of years even.
So let me ask you,
That
Joe,
history is there,
piggybacking off of that.
Mhm.
And you had mentioned the 2000 you kind of felt was like a stopping point of sorts. Every decade was known as like what sound came out of that decade. So I mean the 50s you had doo-wop, 60s you had like the Beatles and the English Invasion, 70s you had the creation of heavy metal, but you also had other things going on. 80s was your hair bands. 90s you got into grunge. I
Right.
agree with you. 2000 to 2020, here we are 20 years later. What has happened the past 2 decades?
Yeah.
What
And-
thumbprint do we have on these past 2
Well,
decades?
here's what I actually did it. If you do it like almost mathematically, right? So if you go back to the 50s, you had Elvis. Okay, I'm talking. Let's go literally with the landmarks, the high points, right? So in the Elvis, you had Elvis came about 56, really. I mean, when he really started to, you know, next thing you had, which would have been so 56, so 8 years later, or maybe 7 years later, 1963,
The Beatles.
the Beatles. Now from 63, I mean, you could say that in between there you had the rise of the whole psychedelic rock thing, but really that just piggybacked on the Beatles thing because the Beatles were the first, they were the inspiration for most of, right? So you have the Beatles in 63, 64. Now, the next thing really, as far as I'm concerned, that would have been a statement, I would say would have been glam rock, which came about around 71, 72. David Bowie, Spirit, T-Rex, Roxy
Cooper.
Music, Mott the Hoople. Elton John even was considered glam back then for a while after he came out of his folk phase, when he did Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Rod Stewart was even lumped in there. So that was in, let's say, it started really in like late 71. So now you go from 64 with the Beatles to 71. So previously you had an 8-year gap. Now 64 to 71, you have a 8-year gap again. So you got 8 years. Okay. Now you come to 76, not long after the glam rock thing, a few years later. And what do you have?
Disco
Punk rock.
explosion. Well, yeah.
Okay. Pistols come on, but way before the Pistols, I mean, even in 73, we had the New York Dolls, which could be considered glam, but really they were, a punk band. You have MC5 and Iggy and the Stooges back in the 60s,
Yeah.
68,
yeah.
67. They could be considered the forefathers. But beyond that, so now we have the punk rock thing comes, and then from that we get spawned post-punk and industrial and this and that. So nothing happens after that. It spawns many subgenres of music, but then nothing happens until when? 93, we could say grunge really, or 92 really, maybe 92. It didn't really blossom until 94.
Yeah.
I think, if I recall.
Well, I think Nirvana hit it big. They were the first ones out the gate. I feel with Smells Like Teen Spirit, and that came out in 91.
Oh, it did 91. Okay,
yeah.
so there you go. That's really what spearheaded the whole thing. So now we're at 91. Okay, and that's it. There hasn't been anything since.
Somebody mentioned prog metal in 2000. I mean, you
Yeah.
you had that. You had some of the new metal. You had the Limp Bizkit rap rock thing that was there for a little bit, but
Yeah, I mean,
nothing that I would
these are,
say you really cemented
well, look,
into.
let me say this then. I did skip something out there. I skipped something. Previous to grunge, I will give props absolutely in the mid 80s to the hip hop or rap thing that was going on.
The creation, yeah.
I mean, now I don't, uh, that what was being done back then has nothing to do with the hip hop and rap. I don't care. You
Yeah,
can
no way.
bitch at me all you want if you think you know different. But I'm telling you, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Curtis Blow, Run DMC, Houdini, Soul Sonic Force, Public Enemy, Africa
Rob,
Bambaataa.
Rob
These were
Bates.
all
Yeah.
groundbreaking artists with lyrics that really spoke about what it was like to grow up in an urban environment in an African American neighborhood that was plagued with problems. And you
Yeah.
listen to a song like The Message by
Oh yeah.
Grandmaster Flash, that is hardcore. He's talking about finding babies in dumpsters and needles on the. This is seriously good writing, and the experimentation they did in the studio with the drum machines and the beatboxes and the very sparse instrumentation. So yes, I completely forgot about that. That was groundbreaking and revolutionary. So I will throw that right into the mix. But all the bottom line is to get back to your question. So once we get to grunge, which a lot of people, I mean, I talk to people all the time about music, just as we're both talking, and grunge just gets such a bad name. I mean, everybody from everyone, punk rockers hated grunge, prog rockers hated grunge, classic rocks, kind of, they were about the only ones that had a little bit of an allegiance because you had like Soundgarden and bands like that kind of bordered on a little bit of a classic rock sound. But for the most part, it gets a bad rap, man. It just does. And it's a shame because there was a lot of good stuff put out, but it got so crazy. It just like, there was just too many bands all of a sudden. Too many
Right.
bands were putting out too many records and it got diluted. But since then, you could say the prog metal thing. I mean, look, I'm the biggest Porcupine Tree fan in the world. They are, other than Todd Rundgren, they're right there. I mean, they're almost neck and neck with Todd. Steven Wilson, Porcupine Tree. And to me, they are the best example, as of 2002 when they kind of went prog metal. And through them, I've been turned, I've learned, I've discovered many, many more of the prog metal bands. But I would have to say prog metal, not really a revolutionary thing because they're basically taking things that already existed, and
Yeah.
just
Oh yeah.
mashing. It's a mashup. So really, I mean, as far as anything that's broken ground or made the music world, which it's just look, let's just say this: it's not going to happen. We're done. We're done because if you look at grunge as the last, bastion of that, we're already looking at 27 years.
Yeah.
Now go back to what I said earlier: the time, the space, the years between all those other things. 7 years, 8 years, 3, 4, if it was going to happen, it would have happened. But it's never going to happen because of the way things are now.
Yeah.
Okay. With streaming, and believe me, I am the last. I don't think streaming killed music. If you want to do a whole show on that, I'll do it. I can't stand people who say, "Oh, I don't like Spotify because they don't pay the artist the royalty rate." Who are you? Are you the artist? If the artist didn't want their stuff on Spotify, they could take it off at any time. Their
Yeah.
management could take it off. The label could take it off. But they leave it on there. And you know why? Because it's a great promotional tool.
Yes.
Like radio used to be. Do you think when songs were being played on AM radio back in the 60s and 70s, the artist was seeing anything more than a tenth of a tenth of a tenth of a tenth of a penny, just like they are now on streaming? But it was how you promoted the artist to go. It sold tickets to their concerts. You bought the album because you heard the song. And people say Spotify is just this free, thing. Oh, I could go on there, and I can't tell you how many physical CDs I have bought from me discovering something on Spotify or listening to the new album from a band I like and going, Yeah, I like it. I'm buying that. And then I go to their website or I go to Bandcamp. You know,
Yeah.
Spotify now has it so you could buy the merch right off of the album. So if you're listening to an album, you scroll to the bottom, all the merch is right there, and it takes you right to their websites.
I must admit, and this is gonna, I don't know what kind of light this is gonna put my viewers in looking at me. There's so many bands that I've found off of Spotify that I would have never heard about in a million years
Absolutely.
that are amazing bands that I know now
Absolutely.
personally just by going through Spotify.
Absolutely. And you know what? What it does is, so when that band comes to town, ooh, they're good. I heard them. I'm
Yeah.
going to buy a ticket. Or if you're like me, a person who, look, this right here. I don't know if you can even see this, but I'll move this a little bit here. That rack next to me is all the way down to there. That's just my Todd Rundgren collection.
Wow.
There's like I have about 150 pieces, just Todd Rundgren. So I buy physical product. I'm not one of these guys who just goes on Spotify and listens on Spotify,
right,
and then turns it off and goes to bed. I buy physical product, and if you're a music fan and you're sitting there complaining how Spotify doesn't pay the artist the royalty rate, then do something the fuck about it. Go on Bandcamp, which is what I also do, where the artist gets 95 or 90% of the profits, or go to the band's website and buy memorabilia, buy T-shirts. Do something proactive about it instead of just sitting there complaining. And they're the same people who I might say are on YouTube all friggin' day long. Okay, now YouTube doesn't pay a whole hell of a lot either. Not to mention, a lot of times uploaders are making more money than the artists themselves, on the backs of those artists. But you'll go to YouTube and look, give you a good example. On Facebook, and this is something that I'll just touch on briefly because it goes back to what you were saying about the situation right now. I can post photos all day long on Facebook. I could post flyers, posters, print ads from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, whatever. Everybody loves them. Now, I'm not trying to alienate you, my audience, but I got to tell you, it's disappointing. When I post song links to actual songs, to music, which is what this is all about. What I do is forget all the memorabilia and all that. It's really all about your ears and you listening to the actual music that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When I post links, they get nothing. You could go on my timeline and you could look at where I post a song. Now, what is it? It's this. One click. It takes all of about 5 seconds to get to that song I just posted. Nobody clicks through. They just don't click through. And what they'll do is they'll give it a thumbs up, but they won't actually click through. Oh, yeah, I like that song. I remember that song. That's a good song. Thumbs up. This is a big problem. This is a problem.
I agree.
So the problem that I'm having is I can't get people to actually go. And I have so much music that I want to turn and forget about trying to put them into new music. Yeah. I mean, I only have a slight little bit of a chance if I give them somebody they already know or someone from the 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s. God forbid, like I've tried to put Porcupine Tree on there countless times or Steven Wilson, and it just sits there. It's like it's crickets, man. Nothing. And it's
now I saw. I think it was your post this past week, Johnny Lydon, his Hawaii.
Yeah.
I clicked through on that, and that was fantastic.
And that
kind of had my heart too.
Oh man, I've been looking at all the interviews he's been doing lately, and he gets a bad rap too because I don't know, he did some shit with Trump. He was backing Trump or talking like, being positive about Trump. But you know what? I don't listen to that shit. If I listen, if I had to listen to what every musician I like had to say politically or whatever, socially or all that, there would be nobody I like. So I don't even listen to that shit, man. All I know is, do you write songs that I like? Do your lyrics strike a chord with me? Does your music strike a chord with me? Do you put on a great live show? These are the things I look for.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I don't like getting into. And I don't read any gossip on any rock stars. I don't read any who they're married to, what they're doing with their lives. It's not my business. It's not our business. I know that in this climate with Twitter and all this shit, everybody's so into that. I avoid it like the plague. Even like today, you had asked me, you messaged me and you said, did you see who came in as the nominees for the Hall of Fame? And honestly, I hadn't at that point. I had to go look it up because I don't even give two shits about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what I think about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's complete bullshit. And then I had to go look and I had to see that Missy Elliott is in there, and even George Michael to an extent. I mean, I just
like I said, to have Missy Elliott in the same class as the Spinners, or and Metallica's been in there for 15 years, and Iron Maiden's just now trying to get in there.
Yeah,
come on, man.
And the Spinners, they've been on the ballot for years.
Yeah. Oh,
the Spinners have such classic songs. Now, this is where I draw the line. So people may say to you, I don't like the fact that they put rap in there or country even, because the country music has their own awards. They have their own Hall of Fame. They have all that shit going on. Why can't we just have one that's strictly rock, man? That's for rock music and its subgenres. If it's going to be country rock, that's good. But this year, Waylon Jennings is one of the inductees.
Willie Nelson,
which they are phenomenal artists. Don't get me wrong; they are incredible, but they don't belong in the Rock Hall of Fame.
I agree with you.
And the problem I have also is that it seems like they have to always put these rap artists in there. It was Jay-Z last year. It's Missy Elliott. Okay, if you want to represent the African Americans in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there's plenty to choose from.
Oh, absolutely.
You could go any one of the I consider Motown. To me, that's rock and roll.
Absolutely.
It's R&B. It's rhythm and blues. There's no doubt about it. But it was, a major, major important thing in rock and roll. It
just like Little Richard said, rhythm and blues had a baby and it was rock and roll.
Look at the first couple of Stones albums. It was just nothing but R&B covers. That's how they started. So, the thing I object to is it's almost like, I get it. Everything's got to be PC. I'm kind of an outspoken dude. I'll tell you, everyth's got to be PC now.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm going to say it. Like the whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, and Jan Wenner, he is a horse's ass. I can't stand him. Okay. His magazine is so irrelevant. It hasn't had anything to do with music for the past 30 years. When he started the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, his magazine, Rolling Stone, was already not even doing anything other than maybe one story about rock and roll in their magazine.
Yeah.
So why he is all of a sudden the curator of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's an ego trip for him. He's hanging on to his last little bit of whatever legacy he has from Rolling Stone magazine. But with this PC environment, you can see what's happening. It's like, oh, well, we can't do it and exclude African Americans, and we can't exclude this, and we can't. So it's it's all exclusionary. Yeah. Everybody with the exclusionary and the empowerment, fuck it. I don't care. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Let me tell you something. They have every year on BET, they have the Hip Hop Awards.
Yep.
They have
there's a Hip Hop Hall of Fame in New York.
Yeah, and they have the BMAs or whatever, the Black Music Awards. Okay. Let me see you put Metallica in there.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Let me see you put, whoever that's a rock and roll artist.
Let's just say Living Color, just for the sake of
having. Yeah, okay, there you go. Good example. Yeah, there you go. Put Living Color in there, right? God forbid they would raise the roof, to quote many rappers. They would raise the roof off the sucker. Okay, I'm telling you, it's just not fair. But look, that's why I don't give a shit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anymore. I don't even follow it. I'll tell you, the only thing that good has come out of it. One good thing has come out of it. There has been some incredible live performances.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, and I collect them all. I have a whole playlist with, all of them. There's just, some of them aren't that good, but some of them are phenomenal. Some of them are absolutely phenomenal, especially the ones where they, where they bring in several members of different bands.
Yeah.
And they do a collaboration. Like I remember the best thing I ever saw in there, I swear, had to be So Nirvana had won, but of course Kurt was dead. So they brought in all guest singers to do the Nirvana songs. So they brought in Joan Jett to do "Smells Like Teen Spirit." It was phenomenal. The Dave Grohl, Chris Novoselic, and Pat Smear, and then Joan Jett with her guitar.
Oh, yeah.
And she rocked the balls off that thing. And then what's her name from Sonic Youth came out. She did a song that to me was spectacular. And that's the one thing I will say that old Mr. Wenner has brought to the table that I appreciate. Other than that, hit the road, Jack.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that fully. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's gotten my attention lately over the course of the past couple of years was the East Coast Music Hall of Fame that's in stationed. Now their museum is supposed to be in Wildwood. Their award show every year is in Atlantic City.
I'm not aware of that at all.
Yeah, they just started, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. Their museum is going into, it's an old abandoned VFW that was the venue that Bill Haley and the Comets first played Rock Around the Clock in.
Oh.
I've driven past the place in a while. I've seen a couple of decorations on the outside, but they haven't done much to the inside. And they only go up to a certain year. I want to say mid to late 70s. That's their acceptance.
Well, they need to get on with some more promotion because I have not, for me to not have heard of it, I usually hear about everything.
I want to say they've had 3 or 4 award shows. It's usually like, but
it's regional.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the awards go to regional artists?
All up and down the East Coast.
East Coast.
It's supposed to be from Maine to Florida, but a lot of it comes from Philadelphia area, comes from the Jersey Shore area, because Jersey Shore was always real big on that as well.
That's an interesting concept too. I would never have thought of something like that. East Coast, Florida to Maine or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a rather large area, but hey, I'll look it up. I'm going to check it out. I always
it's really cool. That they usually do their award show in the not Constitution Center. What am I thinking about? They usually do it in the convention
center.
On Atlantic City Boardwalk.
You mean the Atlantic City one?
Yes.
Okay, because I was going to say if you were talking about Wildwood, I have many great memories, man. I saw so many great concerts there in the 70s. I mean, everybody who would play the Spectrum would also play the Wildwood Convention Center.
I remember a time when I was growing up, I would spend whole summers in Wildwood, and they would have a place called the Holly Beach Mall. That must have been 8 or 10 different nightclubs. You can walk in one door, walk right out, go to like the next club. It was just a whole line of nightclubs when I was growing up, and the music scene was popping back then.
Yeah, they had the Playpen. That was a big one in Wildwood. The Playpen. And you had all the, like the Philly, I guess you could call them, the hard rock bands, Pegasus.
Oh, yeah.
And
Brittany Fox back then.
Yeah. And they were all doing covers, and then they eventually would throw in a couple of originals, here and there. And some of them, like Brittany Fox, actually put an album out.
Yeah.
And, anyway, getting back to, what's going on here. I want to mention one other thing before we go. I don't know how much more time we have, but
I
want to bring this up. This is something I'm involved in. So this is called EMEAP.
Okay.
And what it is it's the Electronic Music Education and Preservation Project. Now, what it is an actual museum out in Harleysville, which is about 20 minutes out of Philly.
Okay.
And I'm actually working with them. They hired me to do publicity and press releases and stuff.
Nice.
And I'm telling you, you've never seen anything like it. I went up there, my jaw was on the floor. They're hooked up, man. They get everything. They have Keith Emerson's, all his giant Moog synthesizer, his modular Moog. They have his grand piano from his house that he wrote all those songs on. They have Jimi Hendrix's Woodstock set up, his amp and his pedals and the whole thing. I mean, and they have like the Pink Floyd sound system on the back of Uma Guma. Did you ever see the back of that album?
Oh, yeah.
Where they have all that equipment. That sound system is there. And it's set up just like the actual sound system They
Joey,
have
can you post a link to that on the Rock
yes,
and Roll Union page?
yes, I will because I'm trying to get people out there. What they do is they book tours. It's a nonprofit, so they work on on arts grants and on the kindness of strangers. So what you can do is you can book a tour for up to 3 people, and it's free. But if you want to donate at the end of the tour, but I'm telling you, it will blow your mind completely. I mean, they have they have Pete Townshend's Marshall stack that he rammed
Oh yeah.
the neck of his guitar in that classic concert that he did that. They have that there. It's just floor after floor, room after room. I mean, it's endless. It's just
Oh, I
endless.
definitely gotta go check this
Then they
out.
actually, besides like the famous people's instruments, then they just have like the history of things. Like there's one room and it has literally every single effects pedal ever fucking created
Wow.
for guitars, from the very like ones that you don't even know existed, from like 1950s, maybe even the 40s. The
Wow.
things that people were just making in their little workshops in their garages that went on to progress to eventually into what we have today. And you see the progression. You go from up here is all the early stuff, and you come down until you get to the current. And they do the same thing with keyboards, drum machines,
Wow.
mixing consoles. It's just if you're a musician or a fan of music, you have got to see this place. And it's right in our backyard. It's Philly.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah, I definitely got to get. Yes, please post that link. So
I will definitely post that link. Definitely.
Yeah, I'll jump on that tomorrow and start scheduling. I definitely want to go check that place.
You got to go see it, CT. You will love it. And all your people who watch this, I'm telling you, anybody who's a player right off the bat is going to love it. But it goes beyond that. Yeah, it's great.
So, Joey, thank you so much for being with
my
us
friend.
tonight. Man, I definitely want to bring you back because I know you and I could shoot the shit for hours.
Yeah.
But,
sorry if I got on my soapbox a little bit there, but I tend to get a little worked up.
Dude, always feel welcome to do that here, man. That's what we're here for. So, Joey, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening.
I will do that.
And we'll
do you
talk
want me to
soon.
send you the link on Messenger, or
if you can post it on the wall and send it to me personally, that'll work both ways.
Okay, you got it.
So thanks, Joey.
All right,
you have a great rest of your night.
You too. Take care now. Bye-bye.
So there was Joey Bruno, guys. Great guy, man. He knows his stuff. I am so excited to have talked to him. And guys, once again, touching base on what we announced in the beginning of the show. February's Artist of the Month, it seems like Tuesday. Our Rock and Roll Union 5th Anniversary Bash is upon us April 8th at the Union Fire Hall, Mount Laurel, New Jersey. That will see Sick Vicky, Carte Blanche, and a band that played the very first Rock and Roll Union live event, Scorpio. They are a Scorpions tribute. They go back, way back with the Rock and Roll Union to our very first year. And so much more good stuff going on, guys. There's a lot of great rock and roll shows going on this weekend. You can go check out Landis Theater. They have tributes to Dio, Iron Maiden, and Judas Priest. There's tributes to the band that's playing, Scorpio, that we were just talking about. They're playing at halftime with Guns N' Roses tribute, Paradise Rose, and there's a plethora of other bands and other music going on out there, guys. There's no reason to not get out and support live local rock. So, guys, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We will be, like I said, live on location next week. We'll be at halftime in Newark, Delaware, talking with my boy Mark Azzello about the music scene, and we'll just keep touching base with all these movers and shakers of the rock world, man. And until next time, don't just leave it. Leave it better. Have a great rest of your week, guys.